Welcome back to Dev Talks Podcast. Today I am sitting down with Mr. Brad Hudson, who's running for Missouri State Senate. Brad, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Devin, how are you doing today?
Doing well. It's good to see you. You had a little meet and greet down here in Willow Springs today, I'm guessing?
Well, there was an event in Willow Springs at
Okay.
Good Graces Pharmacy. A lot of people came out, had some burgers and hot dogs, and just got to shake a few hands, help spread the word about the campaign. It was a great time.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're running for, what principles you stand on, and what you hope to do for Missouri.
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm serving my 6th year in the Missouri House. I was raised on a farm. I grew up fixing fence, working cattle, hauling hay, all that good stuff. I accepted the call to preach and teach the gospel of Jesus Christ in 2005. And one of the messages that I found myself consistently delivering to the congregations that would have me, and it didn't matter to me what name was on the church house door. If they were willing to open up their pulpit to me, I was willing to fill it and I was willing to preach. And I found myself saying that God's people need to get involved. They need to get involved in government. They need to get involved in the political process. And so here I am practicing what I preach, trying to. So yeah, as I said, 6th year in the Missouri House, currently running for Missouri State Senate. Campaign's going well, just having a great time getting out and meeting people and spreading our message.
Well, good. And as I was talking to you a little bit, I know one thing that really stood out to me, as far as when it comes to practicing what you preach, is you are induced exclusively by the Missouri Right to Life. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. So in my very first year in the Missouri House, we passed what was the boldest pro-life legislation in the entire country at that time. Okay. And what was included in that bill, this is in 2019, was we were very try to be forward thinking in the possibility and the hope that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. Mm-hmm. And so we included a trigger in that law. And that led to Missouri being the first state in the nation to virtually outlaw abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Since then, I've been working on pro-life issues. I've led the charge on IP reform. And of course, as a minister, before I even ran for state representative, I was very active and vocal about the pro-life cause. Yes. And Missouri Right to Life, I was the very first state Senate candidate in the entire state of Missouri that they came out and endorsed. And not only did they endorse me, they said I was getting their exclusive and singular endorsement. So I'm honored to have it.
Yeah, and that's pretty special. I mean, it kind of proves the conservative value that you carry with you, not only in your personal life, but up to the state level. I really like it. Kind of switching gears a little bit, abortion is one of those issues that it's a very human issue. Like, on both sides of the aisle, it kind of goes, I mean, we hear the arguments for both. Where do you think life begins?
At conception.
At conception.
At the moment of conception.
So
yes.
the moment that sperm cell, it penetrates the egg, and it is, genetically, it is its own entity at that point.
Yes.
And I agree with you there. I was just wondering because, some people, they'll say they are pro-life, but then you ask them and they're like, well, after like 15 weeks or so. I just wanted to get the stance on where you stood.
No,
with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And you're right. Some folks claim to be pro-life, but they don't hold that life begins at conception view. And I strongly disagree with that. I mean, I think even the science, of course, the science is behind us there. At the moment of conception, you have so many things have already been decided about that tiny human being.
Exactly.
How that tiny human being is going to look and the color of its eyes and stuff like that. So yeah, there is no way. Just no realistic way that we can make any argument otherwise than the fact that at the moment of conception, that is a human being.
Yes, and I agree 100% with that. On that, it's a contentious argument. Even in Missouri, a conservative state, you have both sides of the aisle on this. A lot of them, they like to say, this egg is nothing but a clump of cells. But at the same time, in Missouri, if you bust an eagle egg, you've got a $5,000 fine and a year in prison. So a lot of that is very hypocritical, to say the least. But I'm glad that we're finally getting people in there that are actually willing to stand up against the grain and go with what they believe and what is morally right for society. Because if you look like in New York, California, where they're doing post-birth abortions. I mean, at what point do we just call it murder? Yeah. Because that's what it is.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it is.
Another key issue that you're running on is immigration. You sponsored one of the strongest border security legislation in the legislature this year. What did that entail? Give the voters a little bit of background on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I introduced something that is known as the Border Security Enhancement Act. And, immigration is a huge topic these days, and for good reason. Yeah. We have an invasion, basically, of millions of folks folks that are coming into this country that should not be here.
Absolutely.
And people, constituents, individuals on the campaign trail talk to me about this, and I don't want to, even though I'm a state legislator, even though I don't have any federal power, I don't want to sit across the table from someone and say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. We're just going to have to depend on the federal government. You depend on the federal government for much of anything, you're in trouble these days. So there are some things we can do at the state level. And the Border Security Enhancement Act, it has basically three components to it. One, the bill would create something called, if a person is in this state illegally and they commit certain types of misdemeanors, then that would automatically become a felony.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that helps with deportation there. And so that's felony trespass of an illegal alien. Okay. That's what we're calling that. Also, trafficking an illegal alien child. Yeah. Trafficking, and not everyone recognizes this. And, there are some folks on the other side of the issue, some folks on the left that like to paint the immigration issue as, oh, these are just good folks that are, looking for a safe place to go. In reality, there are a lot of criminals that, well, by definition, a criminal is someone that's broken the law. So
by coming in illegally, you've automatically broken America's law.
Exactly. And quite frankly, in a lot of cases, the countries that they're leaving are glad to get rid of them because they've some of the things that they have done in those countries. Yeah. So, and trafficking is a huge aspect of the immigration problem. So what that portion, that component of the legislation would do would be taking that trafficking of an illegal alien child and creating something that would take the punishment for that. And I've brought that up to basically in line with murder. And I make no apologies for that. I think it should be there. It should. And also there's a component in the legislation to hold employers accountable when they knowingly hire people that should not be in this country illegally. So that's those three components. Those are things we can do as a state to try to push this problem at least outside of our borders. Yes. And that, it puts pressure on other states to do the same thing. Yeah. And if other states want to create laws that make themselves, sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants or make themselves attractive to people that are here illegally, well, unfortunately, I guess they can do that. But in Missouri, we cannot allow that. And as long as folks like me are serving in the legislature, we won't.
Well, I absolutely love that, especially whenever you're putting pressure on businesses to hold that accountable, because that's where it's come from a lot of the times is they come over here, they get cheap work, and they're hard workers. I mean, really, a lot of them are. But if they're doing it for next to nothing, a lot of them turn a blind eye to that. So that really holds accountability at all levels when it comes to this. And I think that's a really good thing for Missouri.
I think so, too. And, we want to send a very clear message that people who come into this country illegally, we welcome them. Yes. People that want to come in and follow our laws and be a part of this great nation, I mean, we welcome them. But when we allow people to come in here illegally and then we allow them to take advantage of resources, we turn a blind eye to that sort of thing. It is a slap in the face to folks that have done it the right way.
It is, and it takes away their opportunity to come here because they're trying to do it the right way, which takes years, and it's a grueling experience to try to get the application process. And it just, where does it end? Especially, it's almost like they're incentivizing the criminality while punishing the ones who are trying to do it the right way. And it's sad for those who do have the American dream to come over here. Yeah. Because it puts a hindrance on them. Yeah. We have so many over here as it is, and if they do it legally, great. We want you here. Like you said.
Yes.
Let's see here. I was going through here. Whenever we were talking we were talking about advocacy of rural issues. Whenever I was talking to your campaign manager, Daniel, I think. What are some things that you plan to bring to the state level? What are some issues you see our small towns or just Missouri facing as a whole that you think you could really bring some change to?
Yeah, well, I think private property rights are huge.
Oh, yeah.
I think, this country is founded upon a number of principles, and one of those is that you can private property. Yeah. The ability to have a piece of ground that is yours. And so, I've worked on private property rights. We shouldn't have a situation where government can just come in and take your land, especially for just for some kind of commercial gain or something like that. Those are things that we want to make sure that we keep from happening.
So you're kind of talking about like eminent domain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a real problem. I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was raised on a farm. I've got roots. I still live on that farm. It's a split off of the farm that I grew up on. that rural lifestyle and private property is at the core of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And in the legislature, we must protect that because if we get to the point where you cannot have your property and it is yours, then that's one step closer to communism.
Yes,
and people might say, "Oh, you sound like you're being extreme," but the fact of the matter is, you don't sink into that kind of governmental depravity, if I can put it that way, overnight.
No.
It happens one small step at a time. So I think, first of all, our elected officials need to recognize that our rights do not come from government. They come from God.
Yeah.
And it is the elected officials' responsibility to acknowledge and protect those God-given rights. And the right to private property is one of those.
And in this issue that we're talking about, what do you think about squatters? Because that's become a very big issue, is these squatter rights, where people have private property, they leave, they're living in a house, they have a vacant house, they come in, and then they have no recourse to get their property back.
Yeah,
You know,
we have to do something about that, and there is legislation working its way through the process. I don't know whether or not it'll come out on the finish line this year. Unfortunately, the Missouri Senate is where good conservative legislation goes to either get watered down or to die, and that's one of the reasons I'm running for the Senate. Is we need people that are proven conservatives that will stand on those principles in that chamber. Yes. So that is an issue that we are trying to tackle in the House, is dealing with squatters. There's so much that we can look at when it comes to this issue. Also, eviction moratoriums. Mm-hmm. If you own property, you should be able to make a decision of who stays in that property.
Common sense.
That's common sense. And when folks move into your property, say you have an agreement with them, they're going to pay you X amount of dollars a month and they get to use your property. Well, that's still your property. Yes. And if they don't abide by that agreement, you should be able to do something about that. And we have seen, it's another example of how backwards our government has gotten. Yeah. We have seen how that has been turned around so much that it's almost like the ones that don't own the property are calling the shots rather than the property owners. And that just flies in the face of our government, the way that our founders envisioned our government, our nation.
And it's it's a blemish on our capitalist society as a whole, because you own the property, you absorbed all the risk of buying it, you were hoping to get a return of investment, and then you get one bad tenant that comes in, and then the federal government gives them allows them to stay in there. I don't know the word for it, but allows them to stay in there past their time whenever they don't, because all it takes is, I've got to get, and then they're stuck in there for 9 months, 10 months till they get into the court process of getting them evicted, and even then sometimes they don't hit it. It's a crazy thing. And another thing I was wanting to talk about here in Missouri, the past year, Missouri passed a law which took effect on 28 August of 2023, outlawing puberty blockers, hormones, gender-affirming surgery for minors, exception for youth who already take the meds before the law kicked in so they can keep getting the health care that they've already been enticed into getting. What do you feel about that? Were you involved with that legislation, or?
So what you're talking about is something called the SAFE Act,
okay.
SAFE, Save Adolescents from Experimentation. Mm-hmm. I actually helped write that law.
Okay.
Now, the grandfather clause and the sunset, I had nothing to do with. Okay. I was opposed to that. Mm-hmm. That's a product of the Senate watering down good conservative legislation. So what we did in that law, as I said, I helped write it. I handled it in the House, and it has made transgender surgeries illegal for kids under the age of 18, and it's also made the sex change drugs illegal for kids under 18,
which is amazing.
Yeah, that's something that, and I got so much national attention when I was championing that legislation. Not all of it. Matter of fact, a lot of it wasn't good. It would surprise you how many people defend this stuff. I mean, we're talking about kids getting sex changes, but they want to call it gender affirming care. I don't let them get away with that, because that's what the left tries to do. They try to control the narrative. I was visiting with someone. I think it was a reporter from NBC, a nice lady, but she wanted to call it gender affirming care. And right when I went into my answer, I said, well, first of all, I'm opposed to that term. Mm-hmm. I think if we really wanted to affirm these children, we wouldn't tell them they were born in the wrong body.
Exactly.
And so I think we need to label it for what it is. It is not affirming. It is sex changes for little kids, and those two things should never go together.
as a kid, you are so easily manipulated anyway. Okay, I'm sorry, but whenever I was a little kid, if someone told me that I could act like a dog or another gender, I was a little craphead as a kid, and I would have been like, yeah, we're going to do this, But that don't mean I cut my junk off and then give me these. It ruins these kids' life, and I love the fact. I don't know if you were involved with it, but that they passed where they could sue the the Missouri's quote-unquote gender-affirming care restrictions, giving patients 15 years or 15 years after their 21st birthday to file a cause of action against their medical provider.
Oh, yeah. I was right in the middle of that.
Oh, I bet.
That's the teeth. So actually, the legislation that I filed on the House side, I think I had it at 30 years.
Okay.
But hey, if the Senate's going to water it down, let's give them something pretty strong.
Exactly.
And so it's watered down. I think 15 years. You said there. And so that is the teeth to the legislation. I was very pleased to be involved in that. And what really is just gratifying, and one of the things that when my time in the legislature is concluded, one of the things that I will look back on and just feel really proud to have been a part of it is I remember sitting down with a Senate sponsor and some other folks. We were just sitting down in the Senate office around a table, and we knew that we were going to get sued if this law was passed. Anytime you do anything big like this, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
So we're going through this line by line. We're picking apart words that, people wouldn't normally pick apart, but how attorneys can be in a lawsuit. And so we got the legislation to the governor. The governor signed it. We did get sued. I knew it was going to happen, and it happened. I actually went up to some of the hearing when it took place in Springfield there. It was the first law in the entire country like that to be taken to court like that and to withstand a challenge.
Really?
I was so pleased that happened. And I'll tell you, during that time when I was up there and the Attorney General's team was defending our law, there was some powerful testimony given by a young lady who was actually from another state. In this state, they had a law in place that we were trying to, that we had passed in Missouri. She'd went through a phase in life where she thought she wanted to be a boy. And she talked about how she would have had a double mastectomy if she could have, but she couldn't. Thank God she couldn't. Because in that testimony, she talks about how now she has a young child. She talks about being able to breastfeed her child. Those are things... that is something that she would have been robbed of if she would have been exposed to this kind of butchery just because she's a confused kid. And I want to tell you, I don't know if there was a dry eye in that audience when she got done testifying. I don't know how the people that were trying to overturn our law, I don't know how they could stand up and defend this kind of stuff.
Or just look in the mirror afterwards. Because the fact of it is, okay, we got these little kids, and I think a lot of it has to do with these social justice, quote unquote, social justice warrior parents. And they have turned anything that's an ism, any of these little transgender, homophobe, like all these things, they've turned them into poker chips that they give out as a social justice token that, like, my kid is a this, so you have to give me these points as a social justice warrior now. And I think a lot of this stuff, it's unfair to the kids that these parents who are just so captured ideologically are forcing this down their children's throat. Let's go get that this transition surgery done. Let's get you on hormone blockers. And then if they ever get married, they'll never experience an orgasm. I mean, honestly, sex in a marriage that's important. And then never have a kid, because they're infertile now, and it all because of an ideology. Why not wait till these kids turn into adults, and then if you're 35 years old and you have a sound mind on you and you want to do that, then that's on you, but don't make the government pay for it. And if you want to do it yourself, you go out there, you pay for it, but you deal with the consequences, knowing that you are of sound mind and of an age where you could make your own decision.
I mean, we recognize as a society that children under the age of 18 shouldn't be able to consent to certain activities, shouldn't be able to do certain things because they have not developed cognitively to a point where they can recognize the life-altering consequences that they could be bringing upon themselves. I had met some folks at what you would call, they call themselves detransitioners, and these are
some scary stories.
These ladies, they realized that they were just confused kids and they didn't need to be exposed to this kind of stuff they were exposed to, but now they are forever changed. changed because when they needed someone to speak common sense into their life, instead they were encouraged to get life-altering drugs and surgeries. And I'll tell you something, one of them who had had a double mastectomy, actually, she would tell you that the drugs that she's been exposed to have been worse on her than having that double mastectomy because the drugs affect her whole body. They've affected her whole body. And what the Senate did with that SAFE Act in putting that 4-year sunset on the drugs portion, in 4 years, it will be legal in Missouri once again to give kids these kind of drugs if we don't do something. I've already introduced legislation on the House side to try to get rid of that sunset.
Okay, so by sunset, you mean this is like a temporary thing that is going to have to come back to the fight.
Yeah, if we don't revisit this as a legislature, that portion of the law, we've successfully outlawed the surgeries, but the drugs are just as important.
Yes.
And we've only been able to do that for 4 years. We've got some folks in the Missouri Senate that would rather make deals with Democrats than protect kids long term.
Yeah, and those are the ones we need to weed out root and stem.
I want to change that.
Yeah,
I want to change that. As I said, I've already on the House side. We passed the SAFE Act last year. I pre-filed legislation to get rid of that sunset. I did get a House hearing on it. It's gotten all the way where it could be brought up on the floor. We've only got 1 week of regular session left. I don't think it'll be brought up on the floor. But as a state senator, I'll have a bigger microphone.
You'll be able to
deal with that issue.
I got you. You'll have more pull to be able to get it down there on the floor. Is it looking pretty optimistic as far as getting that sunset rule or legislation brought back out to maybe make it permanent? Or what's the feeling on that?
The feeling I'm getting on it now is if there's a way that the Missouri legislature can put something off, they find a way of doing it.
Really?
And since this is not, since we got 4 years,
I gotcha.
I don't know if there's a lot of an appetite to deal with this. Now, we don't know who's going to be in office in 4 years.
Exactly.
This needs to be done. We need to protect kids. So, there may be some folks that want to put it off, but as long as I'm in the legislature, they're going to keep hearing about it. And if I had my way, it would have never been on there in the first place. But if I had my way this year, we would remove it.
Is that one of those things where you hear people talking about, like, you have to kind of give and take a little bit, so they put that sunset on there. That way you could get the bigger stuff passed that needed passed?
I was not in those conversations. I was not invited in those rooms, probably because everybody already knew what side I was going to be on. So all I'm telling you now is just kind of my guess.
Yes.
But my guess is it was a compromise to get the Democrats to sit down. But okay, so I'm gonna go back to my first year in the legislature.
And I'm not trying to get you in a corner.
I appreciate this.
Curious.
I appreciate this. I want to go back to my first year in the legislature and show how this problem that we have in the Missouri legislature manifested itself to me in the first year. I talked about the pro-life legislation that we passed in 2019. So during that time, there was a tax credit bill to benefit a business far from here. It wouldn't benefit any of my constituents, really. It wouldn't benefit any constituents in the Senate district I'm running for. Okay, both of those things are in the Senate. We're getting late in session. They're in the Senate. And I found out through some of the channels, some of the connections I got, that there were senators that behind closed doors, they were willing to compromise on the pro-life bill. They were willing to move around certain things. But on the tax credit bill, they would not budge. That is messed up.
Yes. It shows where the priorities really
right.
lie.
And so that was one of my first experiences of, okay, what have I gotten myself into here? Because when I went to Jefferson City, I expected to be fighting against Democrats.
Yes.
And when I'm talking about fighting, I'm talking about political fighting.
Yeah.
I expected that.
Yeah.
I did not expect that there would be certain people, and they're not all this way, but there would be certain people in my own party that would be the major obstacle to getting good conservative stuff done. But I started to see that in my first year. So we are in a situation in Missouri where, folks, it's an election year. You're going to have a lot of people tell you what a constitutional conservative they are.
Yeah.
Look at their voting records.
Look at their voting records.
Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Because there are many people that will tell you one thing to get your vote, and they will go to Jefferson City or Washington, D.C. and do another.
And it's business as usual once they get in there. And that's where the problem lies, right there, is telling the voters one thing, turn right around when they get up there, and they're in a whole new world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you've got all of these people putting pressure on you from different angles.
I'm
And
sure.
you've got certain folks, certain special interests that really they don't care about things like the SAFE Act and the pro-life issues, and they don't care about immigration. All they know is, if you bring that up, it's going to start a big fight, and my client might not get their legislation through. Well, now, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Where are our priorities? When the people that elected us entrusted us with this great honor and privilege and responsibility of being a legislator, they did not send us to Jefferson City to work for lobbyists.
Yes.
They did not send us to Jefferson City to work for special interests. We are there to work for the people, and we must put the people's priorities first.
And they entrust you with that.
Exactly.
And then it's almost treasonous. I'm sorry, but it is.
I hear you.
Whenever, you are sent there under the assumption that you are going to hold their values and what they think is important at your heart. And then as soon as those lobbyists gets in there, it all changes.
That we need to demand honesty and integrity
Where does
from
that
our
start?
elected officials. They've got to have it before you send them up there, for sure. But there's also a level of accountability that there has to be once they are up there. People said things to me. I having a background in ministry, went to a lot of country churches, being raised on a farm. I've been around a lot of good, godly, conservative people my entire life.
And
I've
you
been
know
blessed.
what it's like to be in the governed life, because there's two different worlds. There's
Exactly.
the governed life and the governor's life.
Exactly.
And you know what it's like to be under the foot of the government.
And these people that I've been blessed to be around would say things to me like, well, don't you let them change you when you get up there. And I understand that. And I'd say there's a certain amount of that's possible, but I kind of view it another way. I think when people get up there and we view them as having been changed, it's just the atmosphere has manifested what was inside of them to begin with.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes, when we are put under pressure, that's when we find out who we really are.
That's true.
And in my nice comfort zone life in my church and at my home, I don't have the pressure that I have in Jefferson City.
Yes.
I have proven this is my 6th year up there, I have proven that I will stand strong. The left has tried to throw everything at me. I could tell you about some of the things I've been sent emails, people fascinating about me dying a slow and painful and gross death. But I refuse to budge.
Yeah.
The minute you realize that you can't trust someone to tell you the truth, do not send that person 2 or 3 hours away and then trust they're going to make the right decisions for you when they are there.
Yeah.
We must demand honesty and integrity in our elected officials. And I tell you, if somebody campaigns as a constitutional conservative that will oppose new taxes and then refuses to hold that line when they get there, they have betrayed the trust of the people.
Yeah. They aren't. So. They're not going to do it when no one's holding their feet to the fire,
right.
Especially up there. Yes,
right.
I understand what you're saying. Wow, man, I tell you what, I didn't know what to expect coming in here and talking with you, but man, after just as far as we're in here, I love what you're saying. I love the fact that you are steadfast on your beliefs and that you aren't willing to compromise your belief systems for the many. And I love that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Another question. I know I'm kind of going down the line here, but
I love this.
Yeah,
ask as many questions as you want.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit about education and education reform. I know there's been education has been something that has not been really reformed in a very, very long time. It's been business as usual. Where do you stand on education? Where do you think we need to go with it? Or do you think we're good where we're at? I mean, what's your opinions on this?
We are absolutely not good where we're at. Now, when I went to Jefferson City, I came from what I would call a blessed bubble. It was around a lot of good school districts, a lot of good folks, a lot of good school board members, administrators, teachers, and all that. It didn't take me long to realize that there is a great evil at work in our education system. And I know those are strong words, but if you'd seen some of the things I've seen, you would know that they apply. Some of the material that some of our children are being exposed to, some of the things that are happening in our classrooms, if we do not do something, then this is going to take over our state. I am pro-education reform. I am pro-school choice. That is one of the platforms of my campaign. It is who I am. I want to do everything that I can to move that needle so that parents can choose the right type of education for their children.
Yes.
I was homeschooled back when it was weird.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I like to tell homeschool groups when they come to the Capitol, and when I get a chance to speak to them, I'll say I was homeschooled back when it was weird, and I'll talk about how I don't know how many people would come to my parents and say things like, "Oh, don't homeschool him. He'll be some kind of awkward, antisocial, whatever." Well, here I am. Mm-hmm. I'm serving my 6th year in the legislature. I've chaired some pretty significant committees. I've moved some pretty significant legislation. Am I perfect? None of us are.
No.
But I think my parents made the right decision.
I do too.
Now, that doesn't mean that that's the right decision for every parent.
Yes.
I don't disparage parents who choose to send their kids to a good public school or to certainly a good Christian school. Mm-hmm. We got some great Christian schools right here in the Senate District. Yeah, I love the Christian schools that we've got here. But parents should have that choice. And really, when you talk about the future of who we are as a state, as a nation, you got to talk about education, because that is the next generation. And we can pour all of the money that we want to into education. What good is it going to do if we're raising communists?
Exactly.
So, yes, do we need to fully fund the foundation formula and all that good stuff? Yeah. But at the same time, we got to look at the substance of what we are doing and make sure that the next generation is being properly equipped.
Well, and I know I talked to a lot of people about this. I'm pretty active in our government in just local level, And one thing that we always speak on is how the control. It almost seems like the responsibility of the parent has been taken away from the parent and given to the school system, and now the school becomes daddy and mommy.
Yeah.
One person, they brought up the concern that their kid missed a few days of school because she was sick or whatever, and then automatically gets a threatening letter from the school, like, we're going to turn you into CPS, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And obviously it has to do with funding and money. But at the same time, it's like, we need to limit the powers of these schools, because that's your kid first. It is not the schools.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it does seem like the schools have, and I love school systems. I'm not bashing them. My wife's a teacher. She teaches kindergarten, 4th grade, and now 2nd grade.
Oh, my wife teaches preschoolers.
Yeah,
it's at a Christian school, but she's a teacher as well. So love teachers.
Yes. But there still is the fact that there are things that need change within our school. And I think one of those is relinquishing some of the powers back to the parent.
Absolutely. And when you talk about people that are called to teach, and I really believe it's a calling, like what your wife is doing, what my wife is doing, I would rather sit before a committee of Democrats and debate with them than do what she does every day. She's got a gift for that. Those teachers, they need help. And they need help in order to do the job that they have been called to do. And because there are so many other factors going on in families, in society, in our education system, there's pressure being put on our teachers that shouldn't be there, and they just want to do what they're called to do. Yes. They're called to teach. They're called to help that next generation that's coming up, and I want to make it as easy as we can on them.
And at the end of the day, teachers are not political. They are not. They do not care what's going on, but a lot of the time these schools, they put the pressure on them to be political in one way or another, to push a certain agenda, as we've seen. And what scares me is it leaks over, and then once you get up into the indoctrination level of the college system, and that's where I think the biggest failure of our children is within these colleges. Because my sister, she is a conservative Christian. She went up, and this was 2016, the year of contention whenever it comes to politics, and she had a professor that literally took her aside and said, if you do not take that Donald Trump pen off your backpack, you will be failed from this class. And she had to take it all the way up to the dean of the school and finally get some repercussions on her to get her to stop. Like, that's how bad it is. And so we've entered into this and it's an ideological capture. They are captured by this idea of this liberal agenda, just as a whole. And if you're a conservative, you're automatically at a disadvantage when you go into these colleges, and it's scary.
And we have got to, and I'm glad you brought that up, because protecting the First Amendment on college campuses has been an issue that I've been working on for years. I've introduced legislation, I think, at least 3 years in a row to protect what the First Amendment already allows. The First Amendment allows something called freedom of association. That's what we call it. And that means that groups can get together on college campuses and they can choose leaders that agree with their mission. Unfortunately, there was a situation in, I think it was Iowa, where there was an evangelical group of students, and they wanted to make it a requirement that anyone that leads their group, that directs their group, believes in biblical definition of marriage. That was their requirement. They have the right to do that.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Their school wanted to not allow them to be a recognized group. Well, what did they do? They got legal counsel, and they sued the university, and ultimately they won. Ultimately, the court system said, this is your First Amendment right. The university has violated your First Amendment right. That should have never happened, though.
No.
Students are only on college campuses for a short period of time, and they shouldn't have to retain legal counsel to protect their rights and have that litigation hanging over their heads or the potential for litigation for years. It cost the state of Iowa, I think, about $2 million. If we could get clarity in our statutes to make sure something like that doesn't happen, it could, avoid a situation like that for Missouri, and that's something I've been pushing. The other side likes to fight me on it.
I'm sure.
But these are the kind of issues that, no, there may not be a lot of big money special interests behind them, but these freedom and liberty issues that are so foundational to who we are as a people, they're the ones that we need to be championing. And I'm just honored to be carrying that legislation, and I plan to, in the Senate, continue to push for that.
Good. So. We have to, because I don't care what anyone says. The Constitution, our founding fathers were very smart in what they saw as the outlines of a free society. And the fact that that has become under attack constantly, it seems like the past 20 years, it has become more about changing the Constitution to this living, breathing document than it is about reading it for what it says.
Yeah.
You have the right to free speech. You have
Sure.
the right to own a weapon.
Yes.
But they want to, well, okay, you have the right to own a weapon, but maybe not ammo.
Yeah.
What?
Any way they can tie your hands.
Yeah.
Any little drop of tyranny that can be injected into the bloodstream of our nation, we should have elected officials that recognize that as the enemy.
Yes.
Rather than see it as either not a big deal or something in some cases they're even okay with.
And honestly, the Constitution, as at the bare bones of what it is, should be a nonpartisan issue.
Absolutely.
It should be like, this is what they made us whenever we got our freedom from England, and so maybe we should follow this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's done well since 1776.
Oh, yeah.
It blows my mind how the manipulation of words, the manipulation of bills, the manipulation of just how the interpretation of the document is attacking American rights and American freedoms at its core, and I'm so glad we have people like you in there that is standing up for that, because that's what we need. Because too many times we have seen these people who promise us big things, and they go in and it is business as usual. It is lobbyists. It is corporate greed, and it is looking out for the self-interest over the interest of your people and your constituents.
Right.
So I think, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here.
No, I'm enjoying the conversation.
But,
you're doing good.
One thing, talking about the college indoctrination system, because that's what I think it is who would have ever thought we lived in a time to where we have anti-Semitism back in the colleges, to the point to where some Jewish people don't even feel safe being on a college campus. The fact that they are condoning a terrorist organization, i.e. Hamas, for killing almost 1,200 Jews back in October, and then looking at Israel as the bad guys for defending themselves. But that's the ideological capture that's happening within these systems. And it scares me on where we're headed with it.
This goes back to really something that I think we need to recognize. Yeah. And that is, in this state, in this nation, we have a spiritual battle that is going on.
That's well put.
It is. And when you see, as a minister, as a conservative Christian, I understand that the Constitution allows folks to disagree with me. You don't have to abide by my religion and my religious beliefs. I understand that, but I do understand that there is a spiritual component to what is going on those college campuses.
Yes.
What is going on in some of our schools, even in other parts of this state. What is going on in some families. This nation, in its beginnings, we're a giant superpower now, but we haven't always been.
Yeah.
In our beginnings, we won victories that there's no explanation for except that we had help from a higher power. Yeah. And if we turn away from that higher power, I mean, my Bible tells me the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all nations that forget God. We need to remember God.
We do. And we need to keep Israel as an ally.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, they have always been our ally. We need to keep them. I mean, Israel, it is a sanctuary for Jews, finally. I mean, we have a state of Jewish people and the fact that now it's under attack by our own government.
Shameful.
Our president. That's another thing I wanted to talk to you real quick. And I know you're at the state level, but I just wanted to get some opinions about it. Biden is withholding targeted munitions from Israel whenever Israel's talking about going into Tehran, I think. But he is talking about withholding targeted munitions from Israel. What do you think, as America, what should we be doing with Israel, in your opinion? And what's your opinion on this?
In my opinion, we need to do everything that we can to support Israel.
Yes.
Israel is our ally. I think it is shameful that the current administration has not been pro-Israel like they should be. Donald Trump was so great.
He was.
In so many ways.
The Abraham Accords.
We need to get back to that kind of an America first, Israeli ally president. This is, corruption is going to side with corruption. Yep. In Washington, D.C., there is corruption. And there is corruption in both parties, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, our leadership is so non-existent over there in the executive branch. The Biden administration has been such a failure, and I'm hoping that the people have seen this, and that their knowledge of that will be reflected this November.
Well, it's very important for America to be looked at as a strong nation. I mean, we have seen what happens when America shows its neck. Mm-hmm. Like, Iran directly attacked Israel for the very first time. And I know this is geopolitical, but I feel like it's an important issue to the people around here, especially because we've never lived in a more high anxiety time about the world.
Yeah.
Iran has never directly attacked Israel, and then a few weeks ago, 300 missiles and drones get shot into Israel, and then they try to spin it like, oh, yes, but we gave them 3 days notice. Still you attacked a sovereign country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's important. My whole reason for saying this is because strong leaders like yourself, leaders who don't back down from the other side or from the opposition, are needed in there, because if we get spineless leaders who show their neck and show that America doesn't have a red line, or they will back off that red line, then every world war has happened because it's been a miscalculation by another superpower. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like we are headed in that direction of another miscalculation, because there is no clear red lines by America.
And you know what you're talking about. I mean, yes, these are foreign policy issues, but it's also just common sense.
You would think.
In order to have peace, there must be a showing of strength. Yep. There are some really bad people in this world that want to see Israel destroyed, that want to see the United States of America destroyed. And they're not going to be happy if we, just say, oh, can't we all just get along? Let's just be friends. You do your thing and I'll do my thing. No, they're going to want to destroy us. And they need to see us as that giant that they do not want to disturb. And strong leadership is necessary for that.
Exactly.
You're exactly right.
And, it goes back to the immigration of all these people pouring over the southern border. Mm-hmm. Because if you were an enemy of the state, an enemy of our country, what better way to plant yourselves than to send them over a border that is not checked? Put them in place for in case they need them. Let them loose. Go do what you want. It puts America in a vulnerable position, and I'm so proud that we have people like you and in Missouri that stands up to the status quo and makes it hard for that to happen within our own state. Like you said, deferring it maybe to away from us, but we feel more protected in Missouri because of the legislation that is being passed. And thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. We're working hard. Would love to see it get across the finish line. Mm-hmm. Certainly, that is an issue that I plan to continue working on in the Senate.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're excited to see what comes of it. And is there anything? I know we kind of went through a lot of issues really quickly. Is there anything you would like to say, or anything any problems, issues that you are running hard on that we haven't touched on?
I think I think you've done a great job covering a lot of issues. I don't know if we talked about the district. District 33
No, we
includes
didn't. Let's talk that.
7 counties in southern Missouri, so Stone, Taney, Douglas, Ozark, Texas, Howell, and Shannon counties. Running hard in those counties. We got a lot of support. A lot of folks are behind us, but we're always looking for patriots that are willing to join the team. I've got a website, bradformo.com, Brad the number 4mo.com. I'm on Facebook, for those that are on Facebook, Brad Hudson for Missouri. I'm also on X at Brad_Hudson_. And like I said, this campaign, it feels like a movement of regular people. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And I am so excited to be a part of this and just meeting people all across the district. I mean, from Stone to Shannon and in between. And today we're in Howell County. I'm really enjoying getting to meet folks, and I'm finding out, even though if you go from one county to another, it can be quite a drive because it's a rural district. I'm putting a lot of miles on my car. The people, their desire to see the type of government more like something that our founders, or what our founders envisioned, and their contempt for what our government is becoming in so many ways, that is a common thread that is weaving its way throughout the district. We've got some good, honest, hardworking, God-fearing people in Senate District 33, and I would be honored to serve them.
And I think we will be lucky to have you. But I really do think like another thing, it shows your character. You don't know me from Adam. I mean, I contacted you on Facebook. We kind of started chatting up and everything, and then you're sitting here talking to me. And I own a tire shop in Mountain View, Missouri. I'm nothing special. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I appreciate you sitting down and actually taking the time, and it just shows that you're willing to speak on the issues with just regular people.
Well, you say you're nothing special, but the kind of people like you that own a tire shop and that have a podcast because they care, those are the kind of folks that are going to turn this country around, this state around, because we do. I mean, Missouri is doing some things better than some other states, but we are also we're a little more purple than I would like to see.
Yes, I agree.
So we do need to turn some things around, and it's going to be folks like you and folks that listen to your podcast that are going to help us do that.
Yep. So. And if anyone wants to contribute to your campaign, is there a website for that?
Yes, they can go to bradformo.com. That's Brad the number 4mo.com, and there is a link there to contribute. Okay. If they want to mail a check, they can write out a check to Citizens for Brad Hudson and mail it to P.O. Box 201, Cape Fair, Missouri 65624.
Awesome. Well, Brad, thank you for coming on today. I hope, guys, this has been the interview with Mr. Brad Hudson. I hope you guys like what he said. You have any questions, comments, feel free to reach out to him or reach out to me if you need be, and I can get you in touch. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for
having me. I enjoyed this.
But thank you very much, and have a safe drive home.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
See you guys. God bless.